I'm going to tell you why Cai Bates being added to the 2024 Florida State recruiting class makes the Noles a very worthy opponent for anybody in the very near future.
You are Locked On Seminoles, your daily podcast on the Florida State Seminoles, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
Welcome back into another episode of Locked On Seminoles. I am Brian Smith, your host. Thank you to the everydayers that make this a fantastic show. Please make sure you hit that notification bell if you haven't already, that like button, and make sure you subscribe and share this podcast. And above all else, if you would, comment. I love hearing what people have to say. It's a lot of fun to talk Noles recruiting, which we're going to do in this episode, in Florida State in general. This show can be found wherever you get your podcasts for free and on YouTube, part of the awesome Locked On Network, your team every single day. Today's show is going to be fun. We're going to talk recruiting start to finish. They got a big commitment out of Cai Bates, defensive back out of Edgewater in Orlando, Florida, 6'2", about 185 pounds. Really good football player, very smart young man, and one that Florida State fans are going to enjoy for a very long time. Also, FanDuel. This is an episode brought to you by today's show is brought to you by FanDuel. Make every moment more. Right now, new customers get $150 in bonus bets with a $5 money line bet. That's $150 if your team wins. Visit FanDuel.com/locked-on to get started. Speaking of get started, let's just jump right into Cai Bates. Known him for quite a while. Very good on the 7-on-7 circuit. And this past spring, his recruitment really blew up. The Bamas in the world, SEC schools, Florida State, everybody went after him. He had a long recruitment, committed to LSU, could have went to Alabama, could have went to Florida State, etc. early. Obviously, LSU's defensive struggles this year probably hindered the Tigers. So what is Florida State getting now that he's committed in the Noles, and he committed on Friday, to be specific? They're getting a really smart football player, 3.8 GPA. He's the kind of guy that could go major in biology, be fine, math, be fine. He's sharp. You could put him at the back end of the defense. You could put him at boundary. You could put him to the field. He's a football player. The last time I saw Cai, they were getting ready for a game. He comes over to me to say, hey, before the game, and he's got this big club on. This is as good a story as I've heard in my lifetime. You take nothing else from this. Note that Cai Bates is not your typical guy, and this is why. This is why Florida State is going to be a worthy opponent, as I mentioned in the intro, for anybody. They're getting these kinds of kids that love football. He has this big club on. I said, well, what'd you do? He said, he got his hand trapped or whatever to play. Something goofy happened, and he about lost part of his finger. I didn't ask which one. I just like, whoa. And then he, without even asking, he said, wrapped it up or whatever and stayed in the game. I'm like, what? And he just kept playing. He even played receiver with a finger that was kind of hanging. If he didn't have the glove on, he wears gloves, he may not have kept the finger. He's that guy. Florida State is getting a football player that is a bit of a war daddy. I don't know if that's good for his long-term future and all his fingers, but note Florida State's getting the guy that loves the sport, competes for his team, and you can never have enough players that are team-oriented like that. He wanted to be out there for his brothers. We kind of had a discussion about it. I'm like, this guy gets it. He really enjoys the sport of football and wants to win. Can't have enough of those. Man, that's why Florida State, while they have a great team this year going 12-0 and all that, this is incredible when you get these kinds of kids and add to already a dominant class. I got a top 5 class. I'll talk about that in a minute. But they have a player coming in that's different. I don't know how many kids have his resolve to do that, but I also know all of the following too. Extremely long, athletic, could play boundary, could play to the field, free safety, strong safety, nickel, whatever. Very, very talented player. Again, Bama and LSU wanted him. Puts things in perspective. He also has the ability to be a leader. Proven, obviously. And he also has the ability to mix in with any student body. When you add in to Charles Lester, to KJ Bolden, to Ricky Knight, to Jamari Howard. It is unquestioned the number one DB class in the country. We're going to talk about that a little bit too. But overall, just note as a Florida State fan, you should be thrilled and just super happy that Florida State is getting a kid like this because he fits all the boxes. Check mark, check mark, check mark. This is how you build a program and then just sprinkle in the transfer portal instead of using it as your main conduit to getting to the playoff. They did it, but it's the harder route and it's the less likely route from a consistency standpoint. Yes, very near future, players like Cai Bates make Florida State a team that can go on the road, play anybody. When you're getting these kinds of kids, they change the culture of your program. It's something that Norvell has talked about, and a lot of coaches too. This is how you do it. You can't win without kids that want to go out and compete and play for their brothers and make sure they do everything they can to win. Talent's one thing. It's, you got to have that above all else. I get it. You should too. The overall theme here is the balance between the talent, the intelligence, and the heart and grit that guys like Cai Bates bring to the roster. It's pretty rare. So with that, and without further ado, make sure that you check out FanDuel this year. We are going into the playoffs here pretty soon for the NFL. We're going into the playoffs with college football, obviously, very quickly. It's a really fun time to be a part of it. So right now, new customers get $150 in bonus bets with any winning $5 money line bet. That's $150 if your team wins. If you're thinking about joining FanDuel, there's no better time to do it and get in on the action. The app's easy to use. There's a wide range of betting options, including the point spreads, player props like how many yards a running back might get or passing yards or interceptions, etc. You can do the over-unders for a team half, maybe a game between the two teams, whatever it may be. And you can come up with other opportunities as well. Check it out. It's an easy app to use, so make sure you check out FanDuel. So visit FanDuel.com/lockedon and kick off the NFL season. All right. This is one of those things where I kind of want to give it a perspective from my history following football growing up, Florida State in particular, and then mince it in with Cai Bates. We're talking about a kid that, again, is a very big pickup for the Noles. But, DB, you got to play as a unit because one guy takes away a player. Well, they got 3 or 4 other guys they're trying to throw to on that play, too, if they're open. It's whoever's there. One guy can't do it. It takes a collective effort. Again, this is the list. KJ Bolden, Buford, Georgia. They got Ricky Knight from down at Cardinal Newman, just outside of the greater South Florida area. He's in Palm Beach. And then you have a really talented player, Charles Lester from Venice, another corner, kind of like Cai Bates. Bates is from Orlando. He played at, he played at Edgewater. And then you got Jamari Howard, who went from corner to free safety at Miami Norland, who's very long. It's one of the most athletic DB groups I've ever seen, including the Florida State DB classes, 80s and 90s, early 2000s. Really, really special group. Now, here's the question. Who plays where? It's a great problem to have. Howard is playing safety now and having success. I think Ricky is a free safety. If you really needed him to be, he could play it, but he's a corner. I think most people would play him in a one-on-one situation at boundary and let his athleticism kind of shine there. He had a really good pick against Jeremiah Smith, who's probably the best player in the country, in a game recently. He's a good football player. You put him opposite of Lester and or Bates, I mean, they can rotate the guys. It'll take care of itself. You're good. Having guys like Lester and Bates at corner to the field also means you have guys that are physical and you have guys that can handle the screen game. Teams aren't going to handle what Florida State has coming for them with guys like Armando Blunt up front. They're going to screen Florida State to death. They have to. You're getting these big corners that are physical, and that unit plays together, you're in good shape. And then the other eraser, but wait to say this, is Bolden. Very savvy kid. He has the ability to break on the ball as a free safety, strong safety corner, whatever the heck they want to play him at. I have no idea what the original intent is for KJ Bolden because he can just do whatever. He's an interesting piece because with the other guys, You can mix and match him game to game. Much like Bates, KJ is a really intelligent young man. I don't think he's going to have any problems. If you put him at nickel, just as an example, he'd figure it out. If you placed him against a big receiver in a game, they're like, this is their only guy, we want you to play, Bates has got an ankle sprain. We need you to play corner this week or nickel, wherever this guy, he'd figure it out. Having this versatile group, this is what Bolden and the Noles did when I was growing up. They had so many guys, if somebody got hurt, they could find another player from the starting lineup or right off the bench that was at least going to give you a chance because their athleticism was high and they were versatile. It is so reminiscent of when I was growing up. It's hilarious. I didn't think they would be able to do that, just turn it on the switch. But this DB class, tip of the cap to the Noles and that entire coaching staff for getting it done. It's tremendous. Now they just got to figure out, again, where's everybody going to play? I really don't know. I'm just guessing with what I said there, and part of it's going to be who picks up the playbook the fastest and all that, but they're all capable. And you're mixing them in with Conrad Hussey and all those guys. It's incredible. So, again, the 2024 class at defensive back, corner, and safety, unquestioned. It's the best DB class in the country right now. It's high end, it's long, it's athletic, it is incredibly versatile, and it's also got one extra piece before I go to the other side. This is something that you can never forget. When you're getting these kids, especially kind of out of Florida State's backyard, Atlanta, Miami area, Orlando, Venice, etc., you're taking them away from rivals. So not only do they play at Florida State, they do not play at like Bolden, Georgia, or whatever. You're not going to have to worry about Howard going to Florida, which at one point most people thought. You're not going to have to worry about Lester going to Bama, like they really wanted, etc. Those are important parts of the whole conundrum that you're trying to get through the schedule is the back end, because you don't know who you're going to play in the playoff. You could play Bama. I mean, you don't want them to have a ton of DBs. Take them away. That's what Florida State did in the 80s and 90s. They out-recruited Alabama most of the time. Not always, but most of it. And that's the difference between winning and winning really big and being a consistent college football playoff team like this 2023 team is. They went undefeated. They found a way to do it with, like Cypress comes in for Virginia, etc. But you're not going to do that every single year. This is a very unique Florida State team, and one that needs to be put on a pedestal, by the way, on a little bit of a tangent. You're not going to have that. So, again, this is a special DB group. Florida State fans should be excited, and this is why Florida State is going to be able to walk into anybody's house in very short order and be able to go up against them, even if they've got a great quarterback, great receiving group, whatever. And when you can do that, and then you can pin your ears back and attack their run game, you're in business. So Florida State is headed to the right place. On a really unique piece here, Florida State is also going to be doing something that's fun along with everybody else because I get to cover it. Locked On Sports Today is the first streaming channel on YouTube that's 24/7. It's been out for a little bit now. This show and every other show that's a college channel gets to go through it, but they'll have NBA, NHL, NFL, anything you can imagine out of all the major networks. You're going to have all the different news with the free agency coming up in baseball. And then in the spring, the NFL draft, anything you can imagine. If you want to find out what's going on in the NBA, they have plenty of shows on that, all the NBA teams covered, etc. You are covered with Locked On Sports Today. Make sure you check it out and subscribe on YouTube. It's a lot of fun. All right, last thing, the class itself. This is a top 5 class. Cai Bates adds to it. Tremendous football players I've talked about throughout this podcast. The biggest part, though, Florida State made it to 12-0 this year without that kind of class. Just think about it logically. This class is legit, and it's one that, quite honestly, is pretty much as good as anybody's in the country other than maybe Georgia. And they're not done. Armando Blunt and some of these guys coming in are going to play early. Now Florida State has an opportunity to finish off and see what they can get to, but it may end up being the second best class. Once you start doing that, you can still use the portal, not taken away from that. But you do need to continue to build your roster from the high school ranks and an occasional junior college player. It's easier, more sustainable, and it's going to give Florida State a consistency that each year you're going to be a top 10 team. I really think if they can figure out quarterback for 2024, and the 24 season's obviously up in the air. We're not done with 23. But if they figure out quarterback for 24, whether it's a transfer, whatever, I have no idea. Florida State should be a playoff team every year for the next 5 to 8 years. Every year. It's going to be 12 teams. There's really not much reason other than, again, a quarterback injury. Those things do happen, obviously, and I hope Jordan has a great recovery. Other than that, with the way Florida State's recruiting and how well they manage the portal and pick guys that are not only good, but Norvell and his staff, they found guys that assimilate to the roster, and the locker room's good. It's not one or the other. It's talent and team building together. And now you're just adding more talent with these DBs, like I've talked about, KJ Bolden and Bates and Lester, etc. It's a really impressive overall group. You're not going to have a problem with the talent. It's just whether or not people stay healthy. That's part of it. But the ACC is also still pretty good. Clemson's going to be better. NC State, etc. I think Carolina will take a step back, and Duke, with Riley Leonard not being there, will definitely take a step back. A bad year for Florida State would be 9-3 moving forward. A bad year. And that's with Miami and Florida on the schedule, although I think Billy's in a lot of trouble there. But this is an interesting deal. It's a really interesting deal. Can you find the right combinations now? Because it's not going to be talent. It's just putting the guys on the field. That is going to come down to coaching and game day stuff. Because to be honest, outside of the injury to the quarterback, with this class being a top 5 class conservatively, I think it's got a chance, again, to finish number 2, and they'll build that way moving forward. They're not going to have any problems being a playoff team. Here's a little bonus recruiting info for you. As you can see, I'm in a hotel. I'm in Broward County. Just went to the game. I'm in Coconut Creek. Went to the game last night to see Monarch host against Jacksonville Mandarin. Mandarin won going away. Tramel Jones is quarterback for Mandarin. Florida State commitment, class of 25. Tremendous player. I knew he was good, and I've seen him play I don't even know how many times. He is tremendous. Very smooth motion. He's gotten bigger and stronger. He used to be about eye level with me, and I'm 5'10", but that was like 2-3 years ago. He's 6'1" now, much stronger, and he has much more arm strength than I knew. Versatile kid. They got after him. They came pretty hard. Monarch's front did a nice job for most of the game. I don't think he's going to have any problems. He would keep his eyes down the field. Even if a guy wasn't open, Jamie French, etc., he would throw it away, or he would put the ball where his guy could get it. He wasn't throwing it into harm's way a lot. And that's probably the thing that most young, talented quarterbacks that have a plus arm like him will fail. Like, I can get this in there. He didn't do that. Also, he was great, and French is a 5-star receiver. It's his buddy. He's committed to Bama, and I'm sure Florida State's still going to try to get him. The best player on the field last night was Hilton Drake Stubbs, whose brother just happens to be a walk-on at Florida State. It's a kid that Florida State's been after. He's visited. He's very familiar with the Noles, obviously with his brother being in Tallahassee. He had a pick on a jump ball situation on the sidelines where he came in at the last second. I got it on video. You can check it out at FBScout_Florida on Twitter. I posted it. Holy cow. What a catch. And then later he outdid himself. It was him on the hash on the opposite side. They had a receiver that was running an in-breaking route. I believe it was a slant, and he just jumped it from the opposite side. It was very unusual. A.J. Harrison's a pretty good quarterback, and he's got a gun. Put it where it needed to be, but the DB should never be there. Hilton Drake Stubbs runs across the field and makes a diving interception. It's an NFL Ronnie Lott kind of play. And I'm like, holy cow, this is just tremendous. He's a high school kid doing that. And then to finish up, there's a play where the ball bounces around, and guess who comes out of the pile? Hilton Drake Stubbs. Races the length field and scores. 3 turnovers in one game. That's about as good a defensive effort as any player is going to have. He was already a highly rated kid. He's about 6'1", 6'2", 190 pounds or so. He can hit. He can play in the box. He can definitely play deep safety. That was proven last night. This is going to be an elite player. In Florida State, after the DB class they just had, if they were to get Stubbs to add to it, that would be pretty special. So congrats to Stubbs, very good football player, and Florida State's top 5 class. Maybe they end up having another one next year with guys like Stubbs in it, Tramel Jones, etc. So with that, please hit that like button, hit that notification bell, and subscribe to this podcast and share it. And again, like I've said numerous times on this podcast, please comment. If you have something you want to ask about a recruit or something, if I can interview a kid or maybe I can give you an evaluation, because I've seen most of the kids in Florida, whether they committed to the Noles or not, I'll be happy to do it. Love talking recruiting. It's my favorite part of this whole thing because college football rosters change constantly. It's the influx of your talent is your money line. It is your lifeline. So make sure that you comment and give any kind of input you want, or if you want to ask a question, fire away. So everybody have a great day. Thank you very much.